Mayor or a council member hoping to shape the office, and more often than not, it's the office that ultimately shapes you. This is one of those rare occasions when we have the opportunity to make a long-standing, multi-generational impact through government structure. This is truly an historic day, one that has been in the making for over 100 years. Over that 100-year period, there have been 17 attempts to try to move this government structure to something more workable and more efficient, and 17 times it has failed. In around 1920, Minneapolis moved forward with a home rule charter. And at the same time, they weren't able to take that next step to offer clarity between the roles. Throughout the 1920s, those that sought to reform the city government were unsuccessful again and again. In 1948, Mayor Hubert Humphrey tried to have a new government structure set up to offer clarity, to provide better services for the residents, and it failed at the ballot box. And then again in 1988, then Mayor Don Fraser tried to get something past the Charter Commission, but the Charter Commission ultimately decided not to make the substantial change that was being asked, and we ended up with the system that we had up until this last year. It was a system that was disjointed. It was a system that lacked clarity, and it was one that caused elected officials from multiple different administrations to argue more over who had the authority than the substance of the issue itself. And now is truly a time when we can make that change. You know, sometimes history happens to us, and this is one of those times when we collectively can happen to history. It's one where we stand on the shoulders of so many staff and elected officials before us that have tried to make this change. And we are so proud right now to ultimately get this thing done and on the books. By having this new government structure, not only does it offer clarity, it offers a system that will be more efficient, more responsive, and more inclusive to the residents of our city. It'll have a larger and more long-standing impact than any single policy change we could ever make. Because this in and of itself will have an impact on everything from how we deliver services around affordable housing, how we plow the snow, how we make sure that businesses can open efficiently and productively, quite simply how we serve the residents of this city. Is there one issue that will simply dramatically change in the immediacy because of this new form of government? The answer is no. It is a wholesale change that will have long-standing impact, and I am proud to have worked with the City Council, and especially Council President Andrea Jenkins and Council Vice President Linea Palmisano in forming this change that will ultimately help, we believe, so many people. It's bound to make our government more efficient, more effective, and more equitable. As part of this change, we were delivered several recommendations or options by this work group that was established immediately after those elections in November of 2021. That work group offered 3 options. One of them, a deputy mayor system. One of them, a chief administrative officer system, and then the final would have 4 direct reports to the mayor in total, including a city attorney handling legal affairs, the commissioner of community safety, an office that I believe we can all agree on and unite around to get those integrated services of public safety. A chief operating officer that will run the Office of Public Service, and then finally a chief of staff in the mayor's office. Through this system, I believe we can be more transparent, offer the best possible services to the residents that need that help. A few more people that I want to thank. One, the work group. The work group did such a tremendous job in doing research of what was taking place around the country, and I want to say, You know, this structure with a clear executive in the mayor and a clear legislative body in the council is not at all unique. That underlying structure is in place in most every mid-size and large city across the country. In that sense, it's not really a strong mayor system, it's a regular mayor system. From Duluth to St. Paul, from Chicago to New York, they all offer that clarity as to the council that is in charge of legislative issues and the mayor that is in charge of executive. We've taken it a step further, only in the sense that we want to have that integrated approach to Office of Community Safety, and it's one that I believe cities throughout the country are moving on as we speak. I want to give a big thank you to our entire city lead team in our department heads. They have made clear that this is a system that will ultimately help in delivering of city services, and they've been super helpful in getting this system itself set up. Specifically, I want to thank Peter Ebnett in my office, who's been working on this long before the election of last year. He's worked tirelessly and would not happen but for him. A big thank you to Casey Carl, our city clerk. He is someone that has such a deep understanding of both the city charter, the code of ordinances, and how you simply get something done at City Hall. He's been a consummate partner for both the council and the administration. Susan Trammell from the city attorney's office. She's the one that actually drafted up the ordinance that was in fact approved today. She did an incredible job in making sure that the charter checked out with the ordinance, all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. They've done a phenomenal job, and of course the residents of this city who approved the charter referendum in November of this last year. And finally, other council members. Council President Andrea Jenkins and Council Member Linea Palmisano have been there throughout. It is a better ordinance, it is a better structure of government because we have worked together, because the council was able to weigh in, and now we're arriving at a really bright point where we can take some very important steps forward. And with that, I'm really pleased to invite up Council President Andrea Jenkins, one of the co-authors of this new government structure and ordinance. Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, my name is Andrea Jenkins, City Council President, and it is a momentous day in the city of Minneapolis, a historic day in the city of Minneapolis. And, you know, I could just say that I echo everything the mayor just said, which would be appropriate. However, I do want to just add that after 10 months, we have carried out the will of the residents of Minneapolis. And not only have we changed and shifted our entire government structure, which hopefully will provide that clarity, that those clear lines of authority between the council and the executive branch, which we spent a lot of time last term arguing about, and throughout the history of Minneapolis, it has been a constant sort of struggle to understand who is responsible for what activities in our city. I think this action today clarifies those roles in a way that everybody has a stronger sense of understanding about. Not only did we do that, we also created the Office of Public Safety, Neighborhood and Community Safety, which was also on the ballot. It didn't pass, however, through working together with the mayor and the council, we were able to move that item forward as well. I do want to thank my colleagues who also contributed heavily and mightily to this effort. And I will say, I don't know if I've ever seen a time in the city of Minneapolis since I've been an observer that the mayor and the council have worked as closely together as we have these past 10 months. And so that in and of itself is a huge accomplishment. We are setting forth a new direction in the city of Minneapolis. It's a new day, and I'm proud to have been a part of it. And I want to offer an opportunity for my colleague and my partner, Council Vice President Palmisano, to share a few words as well.
Thank you. Our actions today enshrine a new level of clarity and accountability with our local government, the kind that residents deserve and should expect at City Hall. For years, we've heard that the old system doesn't work, that residents weren't sure who was responsible for policies and where to voice their concerns or feedback. Today we change that, and you will see a more efficient system because of it. The Executive Mayor Legislative Council structure is the product of a modernization of municipal government, of our government. The realignment of departments isn't just a reshuffling of deck chairs. Our responsibilities of a city have grown over the years, and we need a system that reflects those challenges. We need to be responsive to an evolving city and acknowledge that the way the city was governed in 1920 is not the same as it should be today. We're moving forward. There's been a lot of focus on how this new structure creates a strong mayor, but let me be clear. It also empowers a strong council, and more importantly, a strong Minneapolis. The clear lanes of responsibility in this structure elevate the council, driving our strategic focus, and allow us to have a planning mindset focused on bettering systems and holding departments accountable for their stated goals. We do our best work as a body, and we do the most good for residents when we work collaboratively. The system encourages that collaboration, and I'm looking forward to what we build under it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President and Council Vice President. Again, thank you to my staff in our office who has really been working on this for several years now. It's good to get to this point. And just a note before I open it up to any questions, the ordinance is in place. However, the old system has developed a mindset at City Hall that has been in place for about 100 years. And so undoubtedly there will be bumps at the road. My, of course, ask to all of us is that we stay at the table to make sure that we're working through things as we get the kinks worked out. With that, I will open it to any questions that you might have. Liz.
Some people who are supporting question 2 are questioning the legality of this, and specifically the decision to put a commissioner between you and the police department. Maybe you want to explain how this complies with the charter and what will you do if the city gets sued over this?
I will start answering it, and then I will perhaps bring up our city attorney, either Susan or Kristen, whichever we see fit here. This absolutely complies with the charter. In fact, this was the system of governance as far as the executive and legislature was what was requested and charged by the voters themselves. The question of whether we should have an executive legislative system or continue with the system that we previously had has been a question that has been asked and answered as part of the last election. What today did was authorize the structure itself in terms of reporting. My support of an integrated approach to community safety is not new. It's something that I talked about before the election, during the election, and after the election. My support for an integrated approach to make sure that we can match the unique skill set with the unique experiences on the ground is something that we all can get behind. For those that were proponents of question 2, because they believed that an integrated approach through an Office of Community Safety was a really great step, they should take some credit because it's a great idea and one that we can all embrace. Again, let's agree to agree, and let's unite around a common goal. And as far as the legality, we've touched on this, we've been through it. Unquestionably, we are moving in a direction that has been authorized. And so if either Kristen or Susan, Kristen, you can go up to answer any remaining pieces of it as far as the legality of it.
Mayor Frey actually answered
Ms. Anderson, yeah.
all of the legal questions quite well. The ordinance was drafted to comply with the city charter. So the orange box, as you see it, is actually still under the direction of the mayor, so still preserves the mayor's authority over the police. And in terms of the second question, we don't have a charter change, but we can accomplish the same kind of restructuring through ordinance. And so what we've got is fully lawful.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Thank you, Ms. Trammell. Yes.
So if I'm a Minneapolis resident, can you explain to me how the old structure wasn't working smoothly, and maybe give us an example of how this new structure is going to be working more
Yeah,
smoothly?
I can, and it's a good question. Imagine being a department head and coming into work every single day without knowing exactly who your boss is. Imagine coming into work every day and having 14 different bosses depending on the issue and not being certain who exactly you're reporting to and when. Imagine being in a time where quick decisions need to be made and quick directions are given by the mayor, yet those directions aren't being able, you can't follow them in full because, again, it's unclear what the deliberative body, which they should be in the council, will ultimately choose. I can't tell you how many times over these last couple of years where I have called in the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, the City Attorney, the Chief of Police, and the City Coordinator, and I've given directions out. You do this, you do that, you do the other, you do this, go, and we need to move fairly quickly because there's an imminent issue that needs to be addressed. And the response always, almost always, the first question was, well, what is the council going to say? And that is not an issue with the council, to be very clear. The very nature of a legislative body is that they deliberate, they engage, they seek feedback from community, and they pass good, thought-out laws. That is what a legislative branch does, and one of the great things that this change authors is that it clarifies who has that full authority over legislation. It is the city council. And so the practical implications are that we can make decisions on a daily basis through an administration. And I want to make clear, this is not a unique setup in having an administration that makes day-to-day operations. That is the case in most every other mid-size and large city throughout the country. This is the system that St. Paul has, the system that Duluth has, the system that Chicago and New York and countless other cities throughout the country have in this executive, mayor, and legislative council form. We had kind of this in-between, no person's land previously that was confusing, and this added clarity.
Do you have a specific example, though, of something?
Well, think of, we've got more than a few issues over these last few years. Almost any time a quick decision needed to be made, whether it was around, it could have been the way we plow the streets or the quick nature we do so. It could have been around a homeless encampment. It could be around some form of handling of a public safety in an integrated fashion, which we couldn't do before. All of those things that need to happen on an immediate basis was tough to do. Now, to be clear, the police previously also reported to the mayor, but all of these other facets, an Office of Violence Prevention, fire, emergency management, et cetera, didn't necessarily report up through the same structure, so we couldn't provide that collaborative approach.
And then I did notice during the city council hearing that there was some question on how you will be tracking success. So how will you hold your own administration and tracking the success and making sure that they're staying on the right path?
Through data. Data that is on a frequent basis reported out. This should be an infusion of additional data and numbers that can be provided in a comprehensive fashion, not just the police reporting out over here and economic development reporting out there, but a greater understanding as to how these departments can actually work together so that we're able to see, are we meeting the metrics that we lay out? Now, for every single issue, there will be different metrics. And so it doesn't make sense to, in this adoption of a new ordinance, which applies to everything, laying out the specific metrics that would apply to everything that we could possibly deal with. There would literally be thousands of metrics laid on the table. But for every issue, we will have metrics. We will be able to determine where we're succeeding and where we're failing, and we'll be able to adapt depending on what that data says. I'll do a couple more.
To get the new offices and departments up and running, and when should people expect to see them up and running? Understanding it might vary for different.
It's a great question, and it's somewhat of a rolling timeline in that some of these offices are up and running now. We have already provided an executive order to have the Office of Community Safety set up in the new reporting structure so that the commissioner, Alexander, has within his purview fire, police, emergency management, violence prevention, and 911. So that's happening. Now, several of these departments, or I should say positions, need to be staffed out a bit more. That doesn't happen today. That happens through the budget process. And so that will take place in the coming couple of months. We imagine that much of this will be set up in full by the end of this year. However, to be clear, there will still be kinks that need to be worked out over the next couple of years. Things will, data that we're collecting will need to be shifted so that we're, again, providing the best and most responsive information. We're going to have to make sure that we're properly designating positions to where they are most effective. We're going to also just have to change how we think about the reporting structure in City Hall, and that goes for everybody from department heads to council members to myself, because we all have been operating under a very, very different system for a long time. It will take some time to adapt. There is nobody will argue that there won't be hurdles along the way. In fact, I can tell you ahead of time there will be, but we're going to deal with them. I'll do one more if anybody's got one more. Otherwise, happy to call it a day two. And this is really one where over the last couple of years, as a city, we have dealt with a litany of crises. And so rare do you get the opportunity to pick your head up and celebrate some of the affirmative, offensive work that we've been able to do. I think this is the epitome of that work in itself. Any other questions before we call it a day? Thank you so much, everybody. Congratulations. Ready? All right, everyone. It's a new government and it's a new day. Done.